Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert is facing yet another police probe. And the investigation this time is said to be more serious than any of the others. So will he survive or will he be forced to step down? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome, I'm Jane Dutton. Israeli authorities continue to enforce a media blackout on the investigation, but the allegations have been described as very serious. Anti-fraud investigators questioned Ehud Olmert last Friday. So far, a number of witnesses have also been questioned, including Olmert's former bureau chief, Shula Zarkin, who was questioned for the third time in the past week. Israeli reports suggest Olmert could be indicted within days. Olmert has been barred from commenting on the case and in a similar move cancelled all interviews ahead of the country's 60th anniversary celebrations this week. For his part, Olmert is denying any wrongdoing and insists that it's business as usual.
Unfortunately, due to the reasons that I can't control, the country is awash by rumors about an issue of an interrogation. It is obvious that by the nature of things in situations like this, rumors and hints and information from supposedly informed sources are thrown into the air about severe things, most of them malice and wicked things. I promise that once things are cleared by the authorities, things will be put in the right proportions, the right and accurate context that will put an end to these rumors. Until then, we have a national agenda. I have an agenda as Prime Minister of Israel. I intend to keep that agenda and to go on with the meetings and other duties and things that I have to do.
Well, Olmert isn't the first Israeli politician to find himself in trouble. It follows a long line of scandals. Israel's ex-president Moshe Katsav struck a plea bargain in 2007 to avoid rape charges, but still faces lesser sexual offences. Last September, former Finance Minister Avraham Hershenson was indicted on suspicion of fraud and theft. Then, only last month, Shlomo Ben-Zeri was given 18 months in jail for accepting bribes, amongst other charges, while he was Israel's Labour Minister. And what about some of the other former Prime Ministers? Well, Ehud Barak, Ariel Sharon and Benjamin Netanyahu have all been under suspicion at one time or another. Well, joining our discussion today are our guests. In Jerusalem, Marco Sheff, he's the Executive Director of the Israeli Project. In Ramallah, Ahmed Al-Taibi, an Arab Knesset member. And in Washington, D.C., Paul Sham, he's a Senior Analyst at the Middle East Institute. Mr. Sham, there's a gagging order in place. It's obviously very difficult to get details from anyone in Israel, but what do we know about this probe?
Very little, as you say. That the most important reason that it's become so serious is that the investigators have let that be known. And the investigators can't really be accused of political bias. I don't think there's any claim that they're trying to get Olmert out. So on the heels of a number of other scandals revolving around Olmert, this is what everyone assumes is going to be one that may actually get rid of him.
There seem to be indications that this occurred during his time in office as mayor. But what's notable here is the speed in which it's been conducted.
It's very notable, and this is a holiday season. There's one holiday, happy, sad, after another. Israel will be pretty much closed down for the next 2 days for Memorial Day and for Israel's 60th Independence Day. This is an unusual time to have this happen. So the atmospheric showed that it must be serious.
Mr. Sheff, what do you read into the timing?
I don't know if I would specifically read anything at all into the timing. Jane, I would concur with the last speaker insofar as there is a process going on here. The Israeli police is clearly investigating the Prime Minister. The Israeli courts have placed a gag order on the details of the nature of that investigation. And so, we are here trying to surmise from that exactly what the nature of that investigation is. The file from the police will, of course, go to the state prosecutor, the public prosecutor, if you will, the Israeli judicial system being very much an Anglo-Saxon system, and the state prosecutor will then make a judgment with members of his staff relating to whether there will be a prosecution or not. So there is a judicial process going on here with a police investigation followed by the state prosecutor making a decision relating to what goes on after that. The gag order, of course, makes it difficult for us to know the nature of it.
Of course, but regardless of what happens, do you think this time Olmert will go?
Well, that's really exactly the problem. We couldn't possibly say that until we knew what the investigation was about.
Well, do you think there'll be pressure on him this time to go?
Again, it depends entirely on the nature of the investigation. You are absolutely right in saying that there have been previous investigations, and Prime Minister Olmert is still Prime Minister of Israel. So I think we are hearing rumours that this particular case is, if you like, a case of greater magnitude than those before. But we have absolutely no evidence to that effect. And Prime Minister Olmert has been very clear as to the fact that he clearly doesn't believe that that is the case. So, I mean, one has to judge each case on its own merits, and not knowing the merits of this case, we couldn't possibly surmise as to whether he will go or not.
Mr. Tayebi, how are the Palestinians reading this news? What are they thinking?
They are following the details, the leaks, the news coming from Israel, coming from abroad. Some Palestinians know more than the Israeli public about the case because they can read foreign press, they can read and hear their press about the details in Israel, which is in Israel under overwhelming gag order about the specific charges and allegations against Mr. Olmert. There are some questions why the timing, why it was raised now. Some are asking the allegations and the suspicions were there with the police for months. Why now? And especially when some close sources to the Prime Minister Olmert, are saying that this testimony of the foreign national millionaire coming from New York is based on political background because he is rightist and he is very much against the positions of Mr. Olmert taking lately. But people should know, and the police is saying that the development, the new development that pushed the whole issue forward is that this testimony of this millionaire is dramatic, and it could lead to indict the Prime Minister for the first time.
Well, indicting Olmert in the current probe would lead to the automatic resignation not only of the Prime Minister but of all the ministers. The Knesset, however, can continue to serve its term if a new member of Knesset manages to form a government. But if the President fails to find a candidate to form a new government, he'd have to call for snap elections. In the meantime, Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, Tzipi Livni, would replace Olmert and serve as acting Prime Minister. The Kadima party would also hold a primary to choose Olmert's successor. Another possibility is that the Knesset would pass a vote of no confidence in the government and bring it down. However, according to the law, such a motion would only go into effect if it were supported by an absolute majority of Parliament. And of course, the Knesset could pass a law to dissolve itself. Now, Mr. Sheff, this timing, as we discussed a little earlier on, is bad for so many reasons. But what about the peace process? What impact will it have on the peace process?
Well, I think, first of all, I would say that we have to be aware and beware of conspiracy theories. The Israeli police is fiercely independent within a democratic state. And if it takes the view that an investigation needs to take place, and that investigation can be from if you like, the lowliest person on the street to the Prime Minister, they will conduct that investigation. You know, Israel is a thriving liberal democracy and the police is independent, as is the courts. And I wouldn't, if you like, obsess about the timing. The timing is what it is. I believe if the police felt there was a need to investigate at a particular time, it will do that. Ultimately, as I said, the state prosecutors will make a call, as they have done in the past, as to whether there is a need to prosecute. And we're not there yet. And that needs to be said. We are jumping ahead of ourselves here. And there have been investigations before, and yet there have not been prosecutions. So that's
yes,
important.
Certainly we are allowing ourselves a little bit of speculation as far as we can go. But if we can go back to the peace process, Mr. Sham,
yes.
What implications, Mr. Sham, do you think this will have on the peace process?
Well, if in fact the government is dissolved, or if there are new elections, it would almost certainly stop, because those usually take 6 months to organize. Everyone will be obsessed by politics even more than they are now, so it's hard to believe that anything could go on. If there's simply if there's a caretaker government, or if the Knesset votes in, chooses a new prime minister to continue, as would be possible, as the Knesset members would rather not lose their jobs at this point, I think, then it might continue as it is, but the government would be even weaker than it is now, and this is a notoriously weak government. But in fact, the expectations of the current process are not very high, so it's not clear what would be lost, but it certainly would not help the process if Olmert were gone at this point.
Mr. Toby, what do you make of the process at the moment? We know that the recent suggestions, the recent movements coming from Bush and Israel haven't gone down too well in the Palestinian camp. Mahmoud Abbas particularly depressed after his latest meeting with George Bush.
You are totally right. There is a huge gap between the position of both parties, Israeli and Palestinian parties. No real breakthrough has been achieved, no tangible results has been achieved, and the yesterday declaration by some Israeli officials that there is a real progress, especially in the border and security issues, is a spin. It's not real. The situation of the negotiation is not encouraging. This government, as has been said, is a weak government. To have another government which replaces this government, which is a transient government led by, let's say, the Tzipi Livni, the foreign minister, leading the country to earlier election, would also not be a real push to this negotiation. That's to say that we are going to no place, to nowhere with this negotiating process. But in the opposite, it can help some parties to say we were so close to achieve, sarcastically speaking, so close to achieve real progress, but the resignation of Mr. Olmert stopped it. Maybe the American administration will say that we were so close, we put an effort, when they did not put a real effort or a real pressure on the Israeli government.
Okay, Mr. Shem, let me bring you in here. Do you think this delay, this confusing time could play into the hands of the right-wing Israelis and to try and delay the peace process even further?
First of all, the big...
Mr. Sham, that was to Mr. Sham.
Sorry,
to Mr. Sheikh.
Ah, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, to me. I think that the positions at this point are really set. I'm not sure that they would have much effect in the government. It's only if the government fell that the right could really have an impact, because former Prime Minister Netanyahu is at the moment the most popular politician in Israel. But the majority, though small, at this point it's 64, is solid with Olmert at the moment. And I don't think if the courts, if he is not indicted, then I think this will be a blip barely remembered. So I don't think the right wing can have much effect unless there is new elections.
Mr. Sheff, with Ehud Olmert's mind on other issues at the moment, what is it that he can be offering the Palestinians now as some sort of sweetener? Because it certainly seems to be an indication that the ball is in Israel's court.
Well, I'm not entirely sure that Mr. Olmert's mind is on other things. He spent all of yesterday involved in peace process negotiations. And I don't think it's entirely true to say that these negotiations are not going anywhere. It was both Israeli and Palestinian spokespeople yesterday who talked of progress being made in the negotiations. Negotiations seemingly are about borders at this point. And let's remember that both sides are, in fact, not talking too much to the media. They do wish these negotiations to go on under the media radar as much as is possible. But from what we understand, certainly yesterday, both sides talking about progress, both sides talking about a narrowing of differences over borders. And so that's extraordinarily important. I certainly didn't feel myself that Mr. Abbas looked or sounded in any way depressed. On the contrary, there seemed to be a certain feeling of upbeat about negotiations yesterday. Mr. Olmert is clearly committed. The Israeli people are clearly committed. The Israeli people are absolutely behind the government of Israel in wanting a final and complete solution to this conflict. You know, Israel celebrates its Independence Day. Tonight and tomorrow, we have a day when we remember the fallen soldiers, and the day after that, we have Israel's 60th Independence Day. And, you know, clearly for Palestinians, there is no celebration, but there could have been celebration. If the 1947 partition plan was accepted, there could have been those two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side. And as Israel celebrates its 60th anniversary, that is exactly what the majority of Israelis want now. And Mr. Olmert, as the leader of Israelis, is clearly out there doing what he can to make that happen. So I think he's absolutely committed, absolutely focused on making this peace process work.
But Mr. Tabi, if he cannot even reach some sort of rapprochement with Hamas, how is Mahmoud Abbas going to push this peace process forward, regardless of what happens in Israel?
He was very much, and he is very much serious in trying to bridge the gap with the Israeli side, with Prime Minister Olmert, in order to arrive to an agreement based on international legitimacy, based on the roadmap, but nothing real was achieved. I would like to make a remark. No one Palestinian official yesterday or today said that there was a narrowing of the gap in the border issues. Not only that, but there is still a huge gap in this specific issue, not talking yet about the refugees, Jerusalem settlement, etc. That's to say, there was a serious discussions on these topics, but still the gap is very much huge. Mr. Abbas is very much willing to have an agreement before the end of 2008. I am not sure, I am not optimistic that even without this new prop of Ehud Olmert, the Israeli coalition, the composition of this Israeli coalition, and the real authentic positions of Mr. Olmert, Mr. Barak, and Mrs. Livni will be will allow achieving such an agreement before 2008. We are
Mr. Sham, what do you make of Ehud Barak and Zibi Livni? What are they going to be doing right now? Are they jostling for power?
I don't think there would be some degree of jostling. Tzipi Livni is not the automatic heir if the Knesset chooses a new prime minister. Meir Shitrit, another cabinet minister, is interested, Shaul Mofaz, but most of them are more or less on the same page. But in the larger sense, I am pessimistic about anything being achieved, even if a paper is signed, because the degree of suspicion on both sides, the peace index that's put out every month came out today. Now they call it the War and Peace Index, and that shows a tremendous suspicion by Israelis of Palestinians, and we know there is a similar suspicion on the other side. So even in my view, it doesn't make that much difference, because even if an agreement, a so-called shelf agreement, is reached, it's unlikely to be implemented.
Okay, Mr. Sheff, sorry, excuse me jumping in here. Mr. Sheff, talk about suspicions back in Israel. I mean, where did it go wrong politically? The political establishment used to be so astute and above board, and then it slowly seemed to unravel. What happened?
I think it might be an exaggeration to say that the political establishment unravels. Israel is a democracy, and there are new politicians who put themselves in front of the electorate, and on the basis of their arguments, their vision, they get elected or don't get elected. So there are new politicians who are emerging all the time in Israel, and the public might or might not give them a chance, and based on their performance, the public might throw them out or allow them to keep on governing. They serve at the behest of the people of Israel. This is, as I say, a thriving democracy.
Yes, it is, but I'm talking about the rot that we see at the heart.
I think one of the things which is interesting is one of the clear changes is a change in the Israeli media. The Israeli media has become much more investigative. Again, you have an open, thriving media and a fairly small country, a lot of media, both newspapers, print and television. So the media is constantly looking for stories, constantly looking, as media does, to fill airtime and to fill pages. This is actually a change in Israeli society. So one could argue, as sociologists do, that the change actually isn't in those who are governing Israel, but the change is in the media. I would really hesitate to say that the Israeli governments and Israeli politicians are any more or less corrupt than governments and politicians in any other liberal democracy.
Mr. Sham,
I haven't seen the evidence of that.
What do you think all this has done for Israel's image abroad?
I don't think it's had that much effect. I think that the fact that scandals are taking place is not something that is unique to Israel by any means. I think the larger policy issues are much greater. I think the increase in wealth in the country has helped to fuel the degree of corruption that takes place. Rot is a little stronger. But it will survive this, but I'm not sure the current Annapolis process will succeed. But with a new president and perhaps a new prime minister next year, I think we will see a rejuvenated process.
Okay, Paul Sham, Ahmed Al-Taibi, and Marcus Sheff. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us and trying to help us understand the subject even better. And thank you, as always, for watching this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye.